So amiodarone, the dirtiest drug. I always say I have a love-hate relationship with amiodarone because amiodarone can be a very good friend. She can be very supportive. She helps you out in tough times. She's there to really solve some problems for you. But amiodarone, like all kind of those close friends, she can get naughty, right? She gets a little dirty. Sometimes she's not that good of a friend. So like all good friends, we have to take the good with the evil, the good with the wicked. And so we have to embrace her and know when to reach out to her, when we actually need her, and when maybe we need to stay away from her and let her be toxic for somebody else, not for us. And why is amiodarone like this? Why is she this kind of weird, messy friend? Well, because amiodarone is messy. It's a very messy drug. Now, we all learn that amiodarone has predominantly a potassium channel blockade effect. Amazing. And what's so great about having a potassium channel blockade? Well, it helps kind of keep the heart in that repolarization stage, that relaxation stage. We love that. Relaxation is great. But amiodarone has a few other characteristics that you have to be careful of. And sometimes those characteristics get unmasked. And when we unmask those dark aspects of amiodarone, that's when she becomes toxic. So amiodarone has sodium channel blockade action. Okay? You have to remember that, and you have to know when not to use your sodium channel blockers, because amiodarone will then do you dirty. She also has calcium channel blockade effect, and she has some beta blockade effect. And so the combination of the calcium channel blockade and the beta blockade is going to affect your AV node, and it's going to affect your sinus node. And so you have to be careful and keep these in mind as well and know when not to use it in that scenario. So I'm going to present you with 3 real-life situations where amiodarone did me dirty, and you're going to learn not to make the same mistake. So, first scenario, you have about a 60-year-old man. He comes in, he's complaining of some palpitations, some shortness of breath. He hasn't been feeling well for a few days. He's been kind of laying low at home, staying in bed, but today he feels worse, and he's coming to you, and he needs some help. His heart rate is 144, his blood pressure is soft, 110/50, and he's breathing a little hard, 26. You ask for an EKG, because you're an amazing physician. And what happens? You get this. And you're like, oh, I know what to do. I know the answer here. It's fast. It's wide, it's regular. And when something is fast, and it's wide, and it's regular, it's ventricular tachycardia. This is ventricular tachycardia. I don't want to cardiovert the patient with electricity because I have to do paperwork, and I have to talk to the patient, and I have to set up an airway, and I don't want to do all that stuff. And I have my friend, amiodarone, and so I'm going to reach for my friend amiodarone, and I'm going to give this patient amiodarone. And what happened? This is what my residency director would call a clean kill, okay? The thing I want to point out about this EKG is that you have a 12-lead EKG of asystole. You should never diagnose asystole with a 12-lead EKG. This is 6 seconds of no CPR, okay? That's not good for anybody, especially the patient. Oops. So why did amiodarone do me dirty in this scenario? What happened? Well, when we took a closer look, somebody looked at the patient's arm and said, hey, what's this? Yes. So what happened in this case? This is a patient who has renal failure, okay? And he had not been feeling well for a few days, and he stayed home. And he had missed 2 sessions of hemodialysis, right? And so now, today, he feels even worse, and he's coming in to see you, and you did not make him feel better, did you? No. Let's take a look at the EKG and see if there are some clues here that might have helped us make this diagnosis. sooner. It is wide, it is fast, and it is regular, and so all signs point to ventricular tachycardia. But there is another clue here that can tip you off, besides the obvious AV fistula in the patient's arm. This QRS is too wide. It's really, really wide. And so when you look at ventricular tachycardia and you see that wide QRS, but it's exceeding the boundaries of one big box, you need to think about other causes of the ventricular tachycardia, namely electrolyte abnormalities, metabolic abnormalities, and tox. You have to think about your toxic causes of ventricular tachycardia. And in those scenarios, amiodarone is not the right option. And so what happened in this scenario? I took a patient who came in with hyperkalemia, and I gave him amiodarone. And what happened? Amiodarone's sodium blocking effect kicked in. And the sodium blocking effect of amiodarone, what it does is it makes the effect of the hyperkalemia that much worse. Hyperkalemia is essentially a toxicity of the sodium channels, okay? When you disrupt the normal gradient of sodium and potassium across the cell membrane, that sodium cannot move properly across the cell. And so now, that fragile sodium channel that was barely hanging on, trying to work against that massive load of potassium, I now blocked it and completely wiped it out. So now there's no depolarization and there's no contraction, and I have asystole. What was the correct option in this scenario? It wasn't amiodarone. It was calcium. So I should have used calcium in this scenario. So look at that EKG. If you see a really wide QRS complex and it looks like ventricular tachycardia, before you reach for the amiodarone, take a step back. Could I be dealing with tox? Could I be dealing with an electrolyte abnormality, namely hyperkalemia? Watch out for amio in that scenario. Scenario number 2. You have a 45-year-old woman. She comes in. She's complaining of about 20 minutes of palpitations, chest pain, and shortness of breath. Her heart rate, you can see it above her, 170. Her blood pressure is, again, soft. She's not unstable, but she doesn't look good. Blood pressure 100/70, saturating well. You get your EKG. It's fast, it's wide. I don't want to cardiovert the patient, but I want to make her feel better. So what am I going to reach for? Amiodarone. My friend, amiodarone is going to help me. And so what did we do here? Fast and wide, we gave amiodarone, and we got ventricular fibrillation. Clean, kill, right? Again, do not diagnose ventricular fibrillation with a 12-lead EKG. 6 seconds of no CPR again. So let's take a look at her EKG and see what we missed here. Was it fast? Yes. Is it wide? Yes. Is it regular? No, it is not regular. This is not monomorphic VTAC, okay? So you gotta pay attention to those EKGs. It's fast, it's wide, but it's irregular, okay? So this is atrial fibrillation. But this is really, really fast, right? Atrial fibrillation, we've all taken care of patients with atrial fibrillation. What are their heart rates when they are in rapid ventricular response? 120, 140, 160? They don't get to 200. They don't get to 220. Not by itself, because the AV node is there to try to slow things down. And so, if it can't pass through the AV node this fast, how is it going? Accessory pathway. It needs the Autobahn. The dirt road is not going to make it go fast. The Autobahn is going to make it go fast. Okay, so you have to find the Autobahn. What were the clues here? We had an irregular rhythm. We had very rapid rates. So when you're looking at rates over 200, that's not regular atrial fibrillation with RVR. We had a wide QRS, and the other clue here is the beat-to-beat variability. Monomorphic VTAC, those QRSs all look the same. When you're dealing with AFib and WPW, which is what this patient had, then you have different QRS complexes. That was another clue. Okay? When you have the orthodromic WPW, the QRSs are narrow, and the patient is going to go fast, and you're fine in that scenario. We get confused with antidromic because the conduction path is coming the reverse way through the AV node, and that widens the QRS complex. And we look at it and we think of VTAC. If you treat it with electricity, you're fine. If you reach for amiodarone, you're going to have a problem. And so what happened in this scenario? I told you amiodarone has calcium channel and beta blocking effects. Those are AV nodal blockers. And what do we avoid in patients with WPW? AV nodal blockers. And so what did we do? Clean kill. What should we have done in this scenario? Electricity. We should have just used electricity. Electricity is a great friend, consistent, reliable. It won't burn you, it won't do you dirty like amiodarone will. Another option in this scenario, if you are super convinced that you don't want to cardiovert, is to use procainamide. Okay? Procainamide is another good option in this particular scenario. I do want to talk a little bit about procainamide in general when it comes to ventricular tachycardia. That is my agent of choice. So I like procainamide over amiodarone almost all of the time. And it's because the ProCameo study showed us that in multiple causes of ventricular tachycardia, procainamide was more efficacious than amiodarone and had fewer side effects in the short term and in the long term when compared to amiodarone. And so if you have access to procainamide, this is the agent that we want to use in ventricular tachycardia. Last scenario. You have a 25-year-old guy who comes in and tells you that he's been having some palpitations and lightheadedness, and that's been going on for about 20 minutes. You get an EKG. Is it fast? Yes. Is it wide? Yes. Is it regular? Yes. This is VTAC. And you don't want to use electricity, do you? No. So you're going to rely on your good friend amiodarone. And so we give amiodarone. And once again, we took a very healthy 25-year-old man and we put him into VFib. Clean kill. What happened? Somebody went back and looked at his chart. Yes. Look at lead V1. Look at lead V2. Look at those ST segments. Classic type 1 Brugada. Okay? Brugada syndrome, very interesting. This is a sodium channelopathy. Okay? There is a problem, there's a genetic mutation on the sodium channel, and so it miscodes and causes a mutation in the sodium channel. And so what happens? These patients can't conduct and depolarize normally. We get these classic EKG findings of these ST segment elevations in V1 and V2. Okay? Now what happens when I give amiodarone to a patient that has a problem with their sodium channel? The sodium blocking effect of amiodarone takes this mutated, dysfunctional sodium channel and makes things even worse. Okay? Clean kill. What should we have used? So this is where you want to actually reach for isoproterenol. Electricity is always your friend, but if you want an agent, then isoproterenol is the agent that you want, or isoprenolone in this scenario. A lot of the normal agents that we use for ventricular tachycardia will actually make Brugada worse, and it will unmask ventricular dysrhythmias, okay? Like VFib. So remember, electricity is a good friend. It's a true friend. It's a reliable friend. Amiodarone, watch out. She has a dark side. Thank you.